On a storm-soaked night, at a lonely roadside station, a single father's quiet shift shatters when a mysterious woman appears under a flickering light. And within seconds, danger strikes. What begins as a split-second act of courage pulls him into a world of secrets, betrayal, and a choice that could change everything for him and his daughter. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where you are watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. The rain came down in steady sheets, turning the cracked asphalt into a mirror for the dim streetlights. Every drop seemed to swallow the usual sounds of the night. The hum of distant traffic faded into nothing, leaving the air heavy with silence. At Crosswind Station, a small gas stop on the edge of town, the night felt as if it had pressed pause. Inside, Martin Cole stood behind the counter, wiping it for the second time in less than 10 minutes. It was not dirty. He just needed to keep his hands moving. Tall and lean, Martin had the kind of quiet presence that kept most people from asking too many questions. His dark work shirt was damp at the shoulders from earlier, when he had helped a stranded motorist change a tire in the pouring rain. On the counter, leaning against the register, was a small photo of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Her smile seemed to brighten the dim light of the station. Martin worked nights so she could have what she needed, even if it meant they saw each other less. The chime above the door stayed silent, but movement caught Martin's eye through the glass. At Pump 2, a woman stood in the rain. She wore a long coat that clung to her frame, her hair plastered against her face. She wasn't fueling her car. She wasn't even moving. Instead, she stood half in shadow, lit only by the unsteady flicker of the pump's overhead light. Martin's brow furrowed. Most people would rush to finish in weather like this. Something about her stillness pressed against his instincts. Then it happened. A figure broke from the darkness near the far pumps, a man in a hooded sweatshirt, moving fast toward the woman. His voice cut through the rain, sharp and angry, demanding her bag. In his hand, the glint of a weapon caught the light. The woman did not scream. She didn't step back. She simply froze, her hands beginning to rise as if her mind had gone somewhere else entirely. Martin did not think. His body moved before his mind caught up. He pushed through the glass door into the storm, boots splashing against the slick pavement. The man turned at the sound, raising the weapon toward Martin. But Martin had been trained once, in a life before the gas station. His shoulder drove into the attacker's ribs, forcing the breath from his lungs. His hand twisted sharply, knocking the weapon to the wet ground. The man went down hard, the rain immediately soaking through his clothes. The world seemed to pause again. The woman stood exactly where she had been, her eyes locked on Martin. There was no panic in her face, only a strange focus, as if she were seeing him for the first time. Sirens broke the moment. Red and blue lights flashed against the rain, reflecting off puddles like shattered glass. The police took the man into custody quickly, their radios buzzing in the damp air. Martin gave a short statement, his voice steady, his answers simple. By the time the officers turned back to ask another question, the woman was gone. No name, no thanks, nothing. The rest of the night passed in uneasy quiet. Martin returned to his post behind the counter, his damp shirt clinging to his back. The rain still fell, steady and cold, drumming against the roof. His eyes drifted again and again to the empty Pump 2, as if expecting her to reappear. He told himself it was over, just another strange night at Crosswind Station. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. There had been something in her eyes, something deliberate, even in the middle of danger. Martin locked up at dawn, the gray light of morning spilling weakly across the lot. He started his old pickup and began the drive home, the image of the woman fixed in his mind. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why she had been there, standing in the rain without moving. But he knew, without a doubt, that this was not the last time their paths would cross. The rain followed him home, tapping against the windshield like a quiet warning. In the photo on his dashboard, Lily's smile met his eyes. Martin reached out and touched the edge of the frame, the weight of the night settling in his chest. He had learned to keep his head down, to live quietly, to avoid trouble. But trouble, it seemed, had just found him. The night after the incident at Crosswind Station began much like the one before. The rain had returned, softer this time, carried on a breeze that made the streetlights sway. Martin Cole was at the counter again, the hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet spaces between his thoughts. He told himself not to think about the woman from Pump 2, but her image kept pressing into his mind. The stillness, the eyes, the way she had vanished without a sound. At 10:30, the door chime rang. The sound was ordinary, but it cut through Martin's thoughts like a blade. He looked up from the coffee machine, expecting a traveler or someone looking for directions. Instead, she walked in. She was dry now, her coat neatly buttoned, her hair smooth and tucked behind her ears. The woman from the rain, only different, calmer, more deliberate. Martin's pulse quickened. "You're okay," he said quietly, unsure if she would even remember him. She stepped closer to the counter, her green eyes scanning the small space before resting on him. "You moved fast last night," she said. "Most people freeze." Martin shrugged, trying to downplay it. "Just did what anyone would do." She gave a small, knowing smile. "No, you did what trained people do." He didn't respond. He never liked talking about himself, especially with strangers who carried themselves like they belonged somewhere far from a roadside gas station. Her gaze shifted to the photo of Lily beside the register. "Your daughter?" "Lily," Martin said. "She's 8. There was a pause before she reached into her coat and placed a small black envelope on the counter. "My name is Claire Morrow," she said. "I could use someone like you." Martin glanced at the envelope, but didn't reach for it. "I'm not looking for work." "This isn't work," Claire replied. "It's trust." He frowned. "Trust in what?" "In reading people," she said simply. "In knowing when someone's a danger before they act." She tapped the envelope. "There's a number inside. If you're interested in something real, call it." Martin hesitated, torn between curiosity and the urge to walk away. "Why me?" he asked. "You could hire security, real security." "Because," she said, her voice softening, "you didn't ask for anything after saving me. Not money, not attention, not even my name. That tells me you're not doing it for yourself." Before Martin could answer, she turned toward the door. "Think about it," she said over her shoulder. The chime rang again as she stepped out into the night. Martin stared at the envelope for a long time after she left. He finished his shift, but every few minutes his eyes returned to it. The rain outside picked up, tapping against the windows like an impatient hand. By the time he locked up and drove home, the envelope was in his jacket pocket. He told himself he wouldn't open it. He told himself it was none of his business. But later that night, after Lily was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table and slid the card out. No name, no title, just a phone number written in precise, careful handwriting. He leaned back in his chair, staring at it. Claire Morrow, the woman in the rain. The woman who had stood perfectly still when danger was inches away. The clock ticked past midnight. Martin set the card down beside him. rubbing his hands together slowly. He didn't know what something real meant. He didn't know what she was asking for. But as the rain continued outside, he felt the same pull he had felt when he saw her at Pump 2. A quiet sense that this was not just chance. It was something that had been moving toward him for longer than he realized. In the next room, Lily stirred in her sleep, mumbling softly. Martin stood, checking on her before returning to the table. He glanced at the card one last time before slipping it back into the envelope. He would decide later, but deep down, he already knew that his life at Crosswind Station had just shifted. And somewhere in the rain-washed streets of the town, Claire Morrow was waiting to see if he would take the next step. 3 days passed before Martin Cole called the number inside the black envelope. Claire Morrow answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting. Her voice was calm, steady, and without hesitation, she gave him an address and a time. 7 a.m. sharp. No explanation, no small talk, just instructions. The next morning, the sky was a dull gray, heavy with mist. Martin dropped Lily off at school, kissed her forehead, and drove to the hillside on the far edge of town. The GPS led him to a narrow road that ended at a tall gate. Beyond it stood a 2-story home with clean lines and wide windows. Overlooking a slope of fog-covered trees, Claire opened the door before he could knock. She was dressed simply, her hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. She stepped aside to let him in. The air inside was warm and smelled faintly of cedar from a small fire crackling in the corner. The house was tidy, almost too tidy, with nothing out of place. "I left my company 6 months ago," she began, motioning toward a chair across from her. "There was a breach. Someone I trusted leaked my location. Since then, I've been moving." She spoke plainly, without drama, but her eyes carried a weight that told more than her words. Martin leaned forward slightly. "So what do you need from me?" "Not a bodyguard," she said. "A reader. Someone who can look past what people say and see what they mean. I want you to help me decide who I can let near me again." Martin considered this. "I'm not trained in that." "Yes, you are," she replied. "Last week you knew before I did that the man at the gas station was about to hurt me. That wasn't luck." For the next 3 days, Martin sat in on video calls and meetings, some in person, some over screens. He rarely spoke, but his eyes were always moving, catching the small changes in posture, the pauses before answers, the flicker of hesitation in a voice. On the 3rd day, Claire set up a call with a man named Trevor Hale, a polished investor with a smooth smile and expensive suit. He spoke easily, offering help, asking about her plans. But something about his tone made Martin uneasy. It was too rehearsed, too perfect, like every word had been practiced in a mirror. After the call ended, Martin told Claire, "He's hiding something." Claire's jaw tightened. "I know," she said quietly. "He's the one who leaked my location. I never proved it, but I knew." Martin stared at her. "Then why are you letting him back in?" She didn't answer right away, because sometimes the best way to stop someone is to let them think they're winning. That evening, while Claire prepared dinner, Martin went to the study to collect his notes. He noticed one of the drawers in her desk slightly open. Inside was a thick folder labeled Project Glass House. Curiosity tugged at him. Inside were pages of surveillance photos, coded charts, and blacked-out names. He flipped through them until one image made his stomach twist. A photo of Lily, taken outside her school, just 2 weeks earlier. She was smiling, holding her backpack, completely unaware. Martin's breath went cold. Another photo showed him, locking up Crosswind Station. Both had timestamps, both taken without his knowledge. He stepped back from the desk as Claire entered the room. She saw the folder in his hands and froze. "I was going to tell you," she said quietly. You had someone follow my daughter, Martin said. His voice was low, but there was steel in it. I had to know who I was bringing into my life, Claire replied. You don't trust easily. Neither do I. You should have asked, Martin said, closing the folder and placing it on the desk. Claire's voice softened. Would you have said yes? Silence filled the room, broken only by the faint hiss of the fire in the next room. Martin felt exposed, as if the walls around his life had been peeled away without his permission. When he left that night, he didn't say whether he would come back. The air outside was colder than before, the mist thicker. 3 days later, he still hadn't returned Claire's calls. He picked up shifts at the gas station again, keeping his head down. But every time he looked at Lily, he felt the shadow of that folder and the knowledge that someone had stepped far too close to what mattered most. And somewhere, in the quiet, he couldn't shake the feeling that the story with Claire Morrow was far from over. The night was unusually still at Crosswind Station. Martin Cole was closing up, the hum of the refrigerators mixing with the faint sound of wind outside. As he locked the register, he noticed a black SUV idling across the street. Its headlights were off, but the faint glow from inside showed someone sitting at the wheel. The vehicle didn't move. Martin kept his eyes on it while pretending to sweep the floor. Every instinct in him told him it didn't belong there. He pulled out his phone and sent Claire Morrow a quick message. Anyone supposed to be watching you tonight? No reply came. Instead, 10 seconds later, a new text lit up his screen. It was from an unknown number. The words were short and cold. You shouldn't have gotten involved. Now she pays. You both do. Martin's pulse spiked. He grabbed his jacket, locked the station door, and ran to his truck. Rain began to fall in thin, sharp lines as he drove toward Claire's hillside home. When he arrived, the front gate was open, swaying slightly. The door to the house stood ajar. Inside, the scene was wrong. Papers were scattered across the floor. A wine glass lay shattered near the rug. Claire's phone buzzed once on the carpet before the screen went black. Martin picked it up. 16 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 voicemail. He pressed play. A man's voice spoke with quiet arrogance. You brought a stranger into her world. Now you get to watch her lose it. He moved quickly through the house, searching for clues. In the study, her laptop was still on. The screen showed footage from the security camera at her front gate, time-stamped 30 minutes earlier. A black SUV pulled up. Claire stepped outside to meet someone. The driver was never in view. Martin leaned closer, replaying the moment. Claire didn't look afraid. She looked like someone carrying out a decision she'd already made. He thought of the one name he had warned her about, Trevor Hale. Within minutes, Martin was on the phone with an old contact from the firehouse who owed him a favor. The license plate came back registered to a company Trevor used for travel. The SUV had been logged at a private airstrip just outside the city. A flight was scheduled in less than an hour. Rain hit harder as Martin drove, the wipers struggling to keep up. The airstrip was lit by harsh floodlights, the tarmac slick and gleaming. At the far end, a jet waited with its door open. 2 guards stood at the bottom of the ramp. Martin didn't hesitate. He moved fast and hard. 2 quick strikes and both guards were down. At the base of the stairs, Claire stood. Her wrists were free. There were no ropes, no restraints, only her steady posture and guarded eyes. You shouldn't be here, she said. You went with him willingly, Martin replied, his voice tight. Why? He threatened you, she said simply. And Lily. I wasn't going to let him touch either of you. Martin shook his head. You don't hand yourself over like you're disposable. Trevor stepped into view from inside the plane, his suit pressed, his smile thin. You must be the night clerk, he said, voice dripping with mockery. Martin didn't answer. His eyes stayed on Claire. She looked at Trevor, then back at Martin. You were right, she said. I trusted the wrong people. But not anymore. The shift was subtle but clear. She stepped away from Trevor. Martin moved forward. The fight was quick, sharp, efficient, and final. By the time security from the airstrip arrived, Trevor was on the ground and Claire was handing over a flash drive. She explained in short, controlled words that it contained months of evidence, financial trails, messages, proof of betrayal. It was over, not because of her money, not because of his strength, but because both of them had chosen to stop running. A week later, Martin stood on Claire's porch. Lily ran ahead of him. Clutching a bag of marshmallows, she had been promised a campfire. Claire opened the door, wearing a simple sweater, her hair loose. No security team? Martin asked. She shook her head. No, not anymore. He studied her for a moment. You sure you're ready for a quieter life? Claire's eyes softened. I've had power, I've had wealth, but no one ever looked at me without wanting something. Until you. That's worth more than anything I left behind. Martin didn't reply. The fire in the yard was already burning, its glow steady against the dark. Lily laughed as she arranged the marshmallows on a plate. It wasn't the end of their story. It wasn't a rescue or a victory. It was the start of something steadier. Two people no longer defined by what they had lost, but by what they had chosen to protect. And for the first time in years, the weight in Martin's chest felt lighter.